Alrighty, a good Tuesday afternoon to you. Welcome in Week 15. Can you believe it? Week 15 of the bald breakdown. See, we did a week, even when the Browns were off, we still did a show. That's why. Yeah.
Dedication right
Just
there.
wanted to make sure that.
I don't even remember how that show went.
Is it 14 or 15? Gosh.
14's in the books, so it is now Week 15.
Yes, Week 15.
We have exactly 1 month left until the end of the regular season. At which point, everybody who's in this business, their workload gets a little bit lighter.
Right. He's not just brawn, kids. Nick Shook, NFL.com and NFL Network, brains as well.
Yeah.
Brains as well. All right.
No hair, though.
It is, first of all, let me just say this. It's December the 12th?
That is also correct.
Okay,
You're 2 for
December
2.
the 12th. I'm on a roll.
Yeah.
I'm on a roll. December the 12th, the Browns are 8-5 and right in the thick. First wild card, I believe. First wild card seed. Right in the thick of the playoff race. And Nick, you know, we go back to 2020, and I don't want to demean that was awesome, right? I mean, you get it. When beggars can't be choosers, as they say.
Right.
When you go through years and years of drought and, you can't even get so much as a 500 team, you're not going to complain. But 2020 was different. Fans couldn't go to the stadium. Jimmy Donovan, that famous line, the only thing missing is you. Now they are going. And now fans are like, we're out, we're enjoying. There were so many other things going on that it was like, man, you really wanted to enjoy it, to the most, but you couldn't really do that because of everything going on with COVID. So I hope we've taken some time to realize, like, okay, yeah, this happened in 2020, but man, having it happen now and kind of the way it's happened, City Cleveland has to feel pretty damn good right now.
You know what's funny is I think that this season has seen so many twists and turns. I've thought about this extensively, and especially this morning. The Browns have about 900 reasons to not be here. I mean, if you look at every other team that has encountered any sort of trouble, they've usually suffered as a result of it. And yet the Browns, despite everything, despite going through 4 different quarterbacks, they're on their 3rd starting right tackle because DeJuan Jones is out for the year. You lost Jack Conklin months ago. You lost Nick Chubb in week 2. You could just continue to run down the list. They should not be here. They really should be an average at best team when you consider all the losses that they've suffered this season, including quarterback. And yet they've continued to find ways to win. And I feel like for as excited as the city is about the Browns, they also recognize that, and they're still hesitant, especially going into last weekend, to fully commit their heart. They've been hurt. They've been wounded. The walls they've built around their heart are so high that it's going to take more than a few
Will
trumpets.
Hunting.
Yes.
It's a defense mechanism.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are.
Will
It's
Hunting.
going to take more than some biblical trumpets to knock
Not
those
you,
walls
Sean.
down.
Sean.
It's not going to go that simply. And yet the win that they got on Sunday, I think, maybe has turned the tide for the fan base, where they might finally say, screw it, there's a month left, we're 8-5, we're all in.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up, the other side of that coin, because truth of the matter is, and I think Jimmy Donovan was talking a little bit, there were still empty seats for Sunday's game.
That was what I was alluding to, is those of the people that I know in the ticket market said that they had a hard day to give away some seats.
They were saying $8 seats, like an hour before the game.
That's a city that, it's the holiday season. People they're spending their money on other things, but at the same time, they're not ready to commit because, I mean, on paper, there's a million reasons to not believe.
I think
exactly.
I think those 2 losses.
If they had beaten the Rams, that stadium's probably closer to capacity. And it's not to say that it wasn't loud and that people weren't there. It's just that you can tell that this is a fan base that has been wronged so many times by this franchise over the last 25 years. That they're hesitant, understandably so. But a win like Sunday, the way they got it done, the way they took down Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars, the way that Joe Flacco threw for 311 yards, 3 touchdowns, and they were able to hang on in a game that they had lost in that scenario so many times in the past. I think that's the point now where fans are going to say, you know what, we're on board. Take my money, take my heart, take my emotions into 2024.
I'm vulnerable again.
I'm ready to love. Back on the market.
31-27 was the final on Sunday afternoon at Cleveland Browns Stadium. Browns, as we said, moved to 8-5 on the season. They get ready to host the Chicago Bears, who might not be a game. All these games like earlier in the year that we thought might be gimmies, a Denver, Rams, Chicago. They should beat Chicago, but Chicago's starting to play good football. They got Justin Fields back. But let me start here, Nick, because I think it's where everybody's starting with this team. And that is Joe Flacco. I said on yesterday's show and had a chance to talk to the great John Telich on the show yesterday, and I was saying that I think along with that angst or along with that, well, I'm not sure I'm 100%
Trepidation.
in. Yeah, along with that trepidation. Good one. Good word. Bohm will love that.
It wasn't the word of the day, but
yeah, it's still pretty solid. Along with that trepidation is also the, like, I'm used to, and I'm sure I'm speaking for many of you out there, watching Browns quarterbacks has been like you're hanging on.
oh yeah.
I mean, you're white-knuckling it. And that's not a knock on DTR. Hey, he's a rookie. Even Baker, who I supported, and I still want to see him do well, like, I would find myself defending Baker, but I'd be the first one to say, and I did say, every time that he would run for a first down in a critical situation, a game-winning drive, 3rd and 7, runs for a first down, he gets it, he takes on a linebacker. I'm like, please don't throw the ball here because his adrenaline is going to be skyrocket.
And he sails it.
Yeah, he's going to sail into the free safety. Joe Flacco is just flatline. Joe Flacco is just beep, beep. Like, he doesn't. That's a pulse. Just very, very, yeah. He is Joe Cool. I mean, I'm sorry. It's corny, it's cheesy, and it's right there low-hanging fruit. He is so calm, cool, and collected that I find myself, Nick Shook, calm, cool, collected, watching the Browns and watching a Browns quarterback. And I have not said that in a long time.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think that going into the Rams game, you had to have that proven to you before you could start to get on board. And then you saw him make some nice throws, lead a touchdown drive. And then what does he do against the Jaguars on Sunday? They lead a fantastic opening touchdown drive with a 30-yard pass to David Njoku, and everything's hunky-dory. He did throw a pick. Tough decision on that play. Probably should have gone out to the flat. But otherwise, you're right. It's mostly controlled. That's the word that I use to describe it is controlled because he is kind of letting it rip. He is airing it out. I think he continues to throw the ball downfield more than any other Browns quarterback in the last 4 or 5 years. But the way that he is completing passes, some of them are not on target, but most of them he's completing. He's finding ways to move the chains. It's not perfect, but it's just so much more consistent than what you're used to without the crushing mistakes of a P.J. Walker or even of a Baker Mayfield in the past that I think Browns fans don't know how to operate anymore because it's not quite that they trust yet, but I think Sunday's game went a long way toward them believing that, hey, quarterback may not be a huge problem for us anymore. It may not be a massive question mark as it's been for most of the last 4 or 5 years and really the last 20-plus years. We can trust and count on Joe Flacco to get the job done. And now it makes me think, God, this is how Ravens fans had it for years. This is a guy that they said, yeah, we're ready to move on from you. I mean, I get it. They have Lamar Jackson. But the whole is Joe Flacco elite thing. Who gives a damn if he's elite? He doesn't need to be elite. He just needs to be good. He's been good for the Browns. He's 38 years old. And because he is on this team, people can believe now. They can believe in this squad and think, despite everything, he's going to go out there and give us a chance to win. And it's better than what we've seen in a long time.
And here's the other thing with Joe, I think, as opposed to other quarterbacks. Like we talk about that trepidation. We talk about, what's around the corner and what. Teams are going to make adjustments. I mean, that's what the NFL does, and eventually it usually proves why he's not. I don't consider him a backup quarterback, but backup quarterbacks, Josh Dobbs, for instance, no knock on him, but
got benched this week.
Yeah, I mean, these guys get paid a lot of money, these coordinators, and they'll find what it is they need to expose, and then they'll expose it, and then back to the bench he goes. With Flacco, I feel like he's only going to get better. Now, I don't want to go crazy with it and say, all of a sudden he's going to turn into Patrick Mahomes. I'm not saying that. No. But he's only going to get more comfortable, right? I mean, yeah, you say, well, teams will try to do this or that. He's already seen that. He's already done that. So it's not like this is going to be some, oh, my gosh, I'm not used to seeing that. He's seen it all in the biggest of moments.
And I think what you've seen is what you're going to continue to see. I don't think that there's necessarily a super high ceiling for it. But again, he threw for 311 yards.
True.
The completion percentage might increase over time. But he threw for 3 touchdowns and 311 yards. Like, he's putting up very good numbers, at least in gross totals, better than what you're seeing out of most Browns quarterbacks. So if you just continue to get what you've gotten out of him so far, and even if you account for the 1 interception a game or whatever, as long as he's outpacing that with positive production, then it's going to go such a long way toward giving you a chance to win every game that's remaining, and especially with your defense playing like it does at home. If you could actually figure out a way to play defense like that on the road, because if they do make the playoffs, they are going to be on the road, then I mean, that's why you feel confident. You feel like you go into a week and you think Joe Flacco's not going to be a problem. He's going to make some great throws. He's going to convert some key third downs. He might convert a key fourth down that ends up going for a touchdown. Who knows? But you know that that's not going to be your downfall. And if it is, then, you're like, well, it was bound to happen eventually. We were playing with house money to begin with.
All right, week 15 of the Bold Ball Breakdown. Again, Browns 31, Jags 27. Browns 8-5, and right in the thick of things as far as the playoff race. And they had some help this past weekend, which we'll get to a little bit later in the show, with some teams losing. Let me quickly go over to the defensive side of the ball, Nick, and I want to start with somebody who wasn't there. Wasn't on the field on Sunday, and run something by you and see what you think. So Denzel Ward missed another game with the shoulder, and of course the vitriol for fans. I get it. They're upset. Where's he at? He's missing all these games. Trade him for draft picks. I heard that one. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
You still want to trade Nick Chubb too, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, but here's my thinking on Denzel. I know it's the NFL, and you're not thinking like, we can beat Jacksonville. I mean, Jacksonville's a good team. They were possibly facing and did face really a compromised quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, although he played well. Do you think the Browns gave any thought to, you know what, we're 8-5. These games in December and hopefully beyond are vitally important, and if he feels like, I'm sure this is where they bring the player in. Do you feel like another week and you don't play, are you going to go from, say, 75 to about 90?
Yeah.
Do you think that's a possibility?
I think that's always a factor. Honestly, it should have been a factor when Deshaun Watson, well, I guess it was, when he missed way back in week 4. When everyone was like, he's going to play. I'm sitting back thinking they're going to the bye the following week. The gains that you can make from missing one game early in the year or at this point in the season, in order to have that person, much more likely to be available for 4 or 5 games ahead of that, I think is absolutely worth the risk. And let's not overlook the fact that this is a team that has spent a lot, of resources on its secondary in the last few years. You draft MJ Emerson, you draft Greg Newsome, you had Ward as one of those 2 first-round picks in 2018. You go and get Cam Mitchell, who you bring back from IR. They've prepared for situations like this because if we learn anything from Denzel Ward's history, it's that he's a good player, but he also gets hurt a lot. Mm-hmm. So they've prepared, and I think that's the strength of this team so far is that this offseason, unlike last year, they spent a good amount of resources or money or time on increasing the depth. You've seen it on the defensive line, and you're seeing it in the secondary. So I don't think it's a massive risk if you trust the players that you have on your roster. And to their credit, I mean, they showed up. Greg Newsome played much better on the outside. MJ Emerson had 2 picks. And you also played without Juan Thornhill. It goes back to their philosophy as team builders. It's no coincidence that Grant Delpit signed an extension right before that game. He's having a phenomenal year. Yep. A great time to have a phenomenal year, considering the path that he's traveled to this point. So really, it's just indicative of how they have built this entire secondary. So I think it's totally fine. And it really speaks to my biggest issue with fans, which is I have many issues with fans, but my biggest issue is a lack of patience and foresight, and also not considering the context. Look, man, there's a month left. Like, if you can get by without him for one more week and then have him for the remaining month and the playoffs, if you get there, that's totally worth it. I'm sorry that Santa is going to come on the 25th and it's the 24th and you're not allowed to open your presents yet. Patience is a virtue. And it's very important in an NFL season that only gets longer and longer, it seems, with every
And it's another thing we're not used to.
Yeah.
Like, I hear you.
Oh, we're definitely not, especially from ownership down.
Yeah. I mean, we're not used to being in this situation. And like I said, in 2020, I think it was just like, man, we'll take anything. And gosh, even though
There's
we
a
can't
pandemic
go to
going
games,
on. And
right. But now it's like, yeah, I think they, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. I really think that fans are torn between fully embracing and being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Knowing that, hey, there is that possibility, that good possibility that at some point it's going to,
Well, yeah.
I'm not saying, and when I say that, I don't mean like it's all going to just blow up in smoke, but is it going to result in a Super Bowl? Probably not, but that doesn't mean that you can't get into the playoffs. That doesn't mean you can't get a playoff win. That doesn't mean this can't be an exciting season. So I think they're trying to make that balance between embracing it and then also like, oh my gosh, why isn't Denzel playing?
Yes. And I think that comes from a place of hurt and a damaged heart. And I get that because I've had a lot of these conversations lately. It should have been a psychologist.
He watches a lot of Hallmark Channel this time of the year.
Well,
you may not know that
season,
about Nick.
It's a romantic time, let me tell you. This comes from, I think, two places. I've had a lot of these conversations where folks want to believe and they want to dream because all they've wanted, and especially my generation, which like the Browns came back in '99. I was 7 years old, and I've never known a winner, save for 1 year when they got in the wild card because they got some help and William Green ran a touchdown.
Run, William,
for a
run.
touchdown, against the Falcons. I was there on crutches that day in the slush, but I made it there, a great moment in history, in Browns history. And then you get 2007 where they're a better team, and that was a team that everyone was like, hell yeah, we can put points on the board, and they missed the playoffs at 10-6. They would have made it if there was a third wild card. So, and in between there has been so many disappointments in Browns teams finding ways to lose so often that they became a verb. They've Brownsed it up again. They don't do that anymore. They really don't. And that's the first step for this fan base to kind of shift toward, okay, maybe I can trust them a little bit. But then all the injuries happen. On paper, there are so many reasons for the Browns not being here. They should not be here. There's a number of teams in the NFL that I have looked at in the last 48 hours in the last few weeks to a month where I thought there's a little bit of fraud in them. The Lions, I think there's a little bit of fraud in them. The Dolphins, I think, there's a little bit of fraud in them. There's actually
Eagles.
Yeah. And I think that's a team that's tired more than anything. But there's a number of teams that on both the AFC and NFC sides where I'm thinking, you know what? I just don't trust you. And I think that the Browns, they avoid being in the fraud zone because while they may be a team that doesn't live up to the highest of expectations, they also have every reason in the world already baked in to not be here in the first place. So you can't be a fraud when you weren't supposed to be here anyway.
And I think the other thing, you're absolutely right. They have gone through all of that, and yet they're still here. I think the other thing is because you always hear a lot of the now it's becoming the narrative on all these shows, like, well, Browns aren't going to be an easy out. And why aren't they going to be an easy out? Because of the defense. Now, that defense has to travel outside of Northeast Ohio. Yeah. And I like Jim Schwartz's response. He could have given some long drawn out. They're like, Jim, how is the disparity? 10 points to, 28 or whatever it is. He's like, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know how you explain it.
Well, I think it's coaching matchup. It's the quality of coach that he's faced in certain situations, like Sean McVay.
I mean, they do feed off the crowd. Make no mistake.
Yeah,
they absolutely feed off the crowd. But they've got to be better.
They need that crowd to be full. By the way, I think that you'll get a sellout crowd this weekend against Chicago.
They will be full-throated, in the words of Kevin Stefanski. All right, week 15. That was a little.
Once you go Flacco, you'd never go back up.
You're not going back up. Week 15 of the Bold Ball Breakdown.
I handled it that time.
Oh, I knew there was going to come a time where I just wouldn't be able to make it after that. Yeah, once you go Flacco, you ain't going back-o. Browns 31, Jacksonville 27, and 8-5 now getting ready for the Chicago Bears. All right, one more thing on defense. Going into the game, I tweeted this just before kickoff. The week before in that loss to the Rams, it hurt that you lost, but it really hurt to me, or at least it made me worried. Here comes that worry and that trepidation again. Myles Garrett is a third down spot. What's going on here? Oh, my gosh. If he's like, I understood keeping it under wraps, but then I'm in the back of my mind always going worst case. I'm like, if Myles is not Myles, and Denzel is banged up. Like, we can talk all day long about elite, and yeah, they have guys to step up. MJ and Zadarius had a sack, which was finally nice to see. But if you don't have those two guys playing at their best, you're not going to get back to the elite level. What was your takeaway watching Miles on Sunday in that game?
I thought he looked better. I think that the thing is he faces a lot of attention from opposing offenses.
Yep.
And the Rams did a really good job of doubling him and chipping him and all that stuff, and I think he just wasn't very healthy. I thought he looked healthier against the Jaguars. He had more bursts, more explosion around the edge. He was winning some, physical battles on the edge, which he hadn't really won against the Rams the week prior. And the numbers kind of bear that out too. His pressure numbers were better than they were the week prior. So that was encouraging. It was a total defensive performance that, they got after Trevor Lawrence a good amount. I don't know. I'm trying to pull up the numbers right now on pressures, but visually it looked like they were getting after him a ton. So if you go back and you look at the pressure rate, 26 pressures, that's almost 47%, 46.4%. That's a good number. Like, that's a very quality number that's going to usually lead to success. So that's as a team. And then pass rushing wise, Myles Garrett, it's going to take me a minute to find those, but basically he looked better, and that was encouraging. I really thought the defensive line as a whole played really well. Travis Etienne had nowhere to run.
They finally had other guys stepping up, it seemed like.
Yeah. And
Miles had help.
And I think that, like, Mo Hurst and, that whole group, I mean, they looked good. And that's how they looked for most of their games at home this season on the defensive line. So I was encouraged by that. And really more than anything, I was just happy to see that the Browns were able to bounce back defensively after kind of being a step behind against the Rams. In that loss in L.A. It was because Doug Peterson's no slouch of a coach, and Trevor Lawrence, however limited he was by the ankle injury, he still played really good.
Give that guy a lot of credit, man.
But he also threw 3 picks.
Yeah, he did.
And 2 of them were his fault. And that's a product of getting after him.
And I think the other thing is, too, and I wondered about this, we mentioned it last week, that, if you're a quarterback and you can't plant that foot and really dig in and fire, I mean, you're not going to have the same zip.
Right.
And I think you could see that on some of those passes.
So on the Garrett point, he led the Browns with 9 pressures. The next closest Brown was Shelby Harris with 4, and Dalvin Tomlinson and Obo Okoronkwo each had 4. What's interesting is that double teams typically happen more to the interior defensive lineman because you are facing center guard doubles pretty often. Myles Garrett was double teamed as much as Mo Hurst was, 6 times. That's a lot for an edge rusher, although Zadarius Smith also saw 6 doubles, even Alex Wright. They were concerned about the pressure that the defensive line was going to bring. The good news for the Browns, and not to really try to pivot this too far forward yet, but the good news for the Browns is that you're going to face a Bears team that has the leaky offensive line.
Yep.
That is worse than the Jaguars' offensive line, which is already dealing with injuries. So you're going to see something similar in an attempt to stymie that pass rush, but the different element is that Justin Fields can run, and that's when the discipline matters. But the last time the Browns played a quarterback with that type of escapability was Lamar Jackson. He didn't do very well in that game.
Boy, I'll tell you what. I know it's everybody when you got a guy that's running, but speaking of guys having a great year, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, it just looks like he is shot out of a cannon on every play. I mean, he was special at Notre Dame. I think we were all just absolutely ecstatic. I was with you. Heck, that was the draft I was watching with you.
Here.
Right?
That was the draft that was here.
Yes, that's right. Here.
That was the draft that you couldn't get close to the stage unless you were vaccinated because it was still like the first year of the pandemic.
That's right.
The weather was horrible on the first night of the draft. And we were all stuck in the science center in a meeting room. Somebody was sitting there and their chair fell apart.
Yeah.
No names, please.
It was a very... I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. I just remember when JOK, like, wow, he's still there. They're gonna get him. He is, and last year, and this is not to, kick dirt on Joe Woods, but look, I mean, they just weren't coached up the way they needed to be. Guys weren't happy. Guys weren't in their right roles. Whatever. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and it's Koramoah, not Koramora. Mark Sanchez. Yeah, I didn't miss that.
You can't trust the national broadcast team to get names right.
Yeah, but JOK has been incredible.
Yeah, he's been everything that you hoped that he would be in terms of a guy who is versatile enough to play on every down. because he's, the big knock on him coming out of Notre Dame was he was too small. That hasn't really mattered because he flies around like a heat-seeking missile, and he's also fast enough to be there in coverage or spy the quarterback. He led the Browns in run tackles, like with 4, which is twice as many as the next closest guy. He's been a massive contributor in a number of key situations where, whether it's a fast quarterback or it's closing the gap with a guy in open field when he's trying to get a first down, he's just been there. He's been consistently there. And as long as he's healthy, I honestly think he's an X factor on your defense outside of Myles Garrett, because that second level has been my biggest concern for the Browns for a long time, which is that they haven't invested in it. And now I kind of understand why. Well, you can only invest in so many certain areas, but you expect JOK to take that next step and blossom, and he certainly is this year. So it's a group that plays so well together, but they each have their individual strengths in each part of the defense. Like Delpit, like we mentioned earlier, I mean, he's just having a fantastic year. Thornhill's been a great pickup of this defense and a great addition, but
just hasn't played.
It just hasn't been that available.
Yeah.
So, like, if you ever get this team to full strength, you get Myles Garrett as close to 100% healthy as possible, man, watch out.
And you know what? We can't leave out special teams in this one either, because one of the things I love about this club, and I said this ad nauseum beginning of the year, really the last few years when it wasn't happening, and then this year when seemingly it was, that little things become big things. Like the Browns, Kevin Stefanski, we know, has the riverboat gambler in him, and he's going to take some chances. But I think he also realizes that, you know what? We've got some guys that if we can play the field position battle, if we need to do that, or it's in our best interest to do that, I trust Bojorquez. I certainly trust Dustin
Hopkins. Great day,
Hopkins.
By the way.
Yeah, he did. Oh, that 70-yard bomb.
God, he hit one from his own end zone and dropped it like the 20.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then Hopkins is now 8 of 8 from 50 plus. So I think what you're seeing is, when you say a complete unit, offense, defense, and special teams. And I mean, when you can trust those guys in those moments. And another thing we haven't been able to say for a few years is that, but you can trust those guys. And I think more importantly, Kevin Stefanski trusts those guys. Uh-oh. What's up with the cynical?
I think he does. I don't know if I do. So I was ready to put the Browns in the ground last week after they lost the Rams, and it wasn't just because they lost the Rams, but just because I looked at that game and thought, man, there's too many injuries, too many things have gone wrong.
I thought you meant special teams.
I meant the whole team.
All right.
And yet they continue to find ways to win to the point where it's like you really have no reason but to just watch and see what happens now instead of worrying about whether you trust them or not, because they should, like I said, they shouldn't be here. It's a testament to Kevin Stefanski as a coach, by the way. We've knocked him for his situational play calling, which we can do until the cows come home, because he does.
We got one more we're going to do today.
Yeah, that we get frustrated by from time to time. But overall, he's done a hell of a job as a coach in managing this operation with all the changes that they've had. And you're right, though. It is nice that you can trust the special teams. It's nice that you can trust your kicker for the most part, except when he needs to make an extra point in a dome in L.A., but that happens from time to time. And the punter, man. By the way, I thought about this during the game and after the game on Sunday, because I like to pick problems with fans. Browns fans, the same ones who wanted to trade Denzel Ward or wanted to trade Nick Chubb. How do you feel now about your deep dive study into Corey Bojorquez as a holder? Because I don't think that's a problem anymore. Funny how that happens, isn't it?
I just love when they went back. Who was it? Was it Mason Crosby?
It was Stephen Hauschka, and it was Tyler Bass in Buffalo. That was the two guys that they examined. But you're thinking about Mason Crosby.
No, I think Mason Crosby was talking about.
Yes.
And he's like, he was fine when.
Yes.
You know what?
When he held for him in Green Bay.
Yeah.
But the numbers they used were an example of a kicker in the twilight of his career in Hauschka, and a kicker who had just begun his career in Tyler Bass. Isn't it fun? Again, context matters, folks. Let's use it appropriately when judging these guys before you want to ship them out of town.
Okay, we're going to get to numbers that matter and then go around the league, and there's a lot to go around the league with here in just a moment. Let's a little bit more here on Kevin Stefanski, and you brought him up, and I think that, I one of the things that I mentioned this on yesterday's show. Look, I don't know if it happened last year and I just didn't see it, or it didn't happen a whole lot because, it hasn't been like this year. But these locker room videos that are getting tweeted out, and I know, the cynic will say, Oh, well, they know the camera's on him, and yeah, he can say the right things. And it feels genuine, Nick. I mean, it feels really like, Myles Garrett coming out and saying, you know what? I thought Kevin coached his ass off today and has recently. Like, Myles is a guy, let's face it, if he doesn't think somebody's doing the job,
he's not going to hide that.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's going to throw him under the bus, but he'll give you the
he's
not
in a unique
so subtle
position
hint.
where he's allowed to do that because of who he is as a player, his stature.
So as much as, and this, it's going to continue with Kevin, and there's going to be that head-scratching moment every now and then, which we'll get to. But the most important duty that he has is leading these guys and keeping these guys together and keeping them connected. And you're right. You hit it right from the top of the show. 4 quarterbacks and all the injuries and all the what could have turned into serious drama. Maybe it did with us. Maybe it did with the fans. It didn't in that locker room and in Berea, and that is a huge credit to Kevin Stefanski and also some leadership in that locker room as well. But you got to take your hat off to Kevin.
So what's the thing that we always talk about when it comes to the Steelers and the Ravens that the Browns have not had? Culture, right? And what is culture a product of?
Winning
and consistency. Stability within an organization.
Yeah.
So I'm on Twitch last night playing a little Madden after a Monday night double feature, twin billing, however you want to describe it.
Supposed to be watching film till the sun comes up.
I got back to it after the game. I had a game to play.
All
Madden
right.
League. I had to play against a fellow user. And I had somebody get in the chat and ask me, I'm a Panthers fan, and obviously they fired their coach, and David Tepper, how long is it going to take, or should I just accept that we're going to be bad for the next 20 years because our owner makes knee-jerk decisions? And I thought, that sounds a lot like the Haslams for the first 5 to 10 years. And Dee Haslam will admit, she's admitted it to me before, it takes a while for you to learn how to do the job. It's not something that you can just come in and throw money at and everything's solved. It takes a while to figure out how to do it. They're now, 10, 11 years into being owners? And what have they not done when they could have done it last year, when even I thought they probably should have done it last year? They kept everything intact. They kept Kevin Stefanski. They kept Andrew Berry.
We support Kevin. We support Andrew. Yeah, you're right.
They followed the plan to this year. And the beauty of it, and the reason that I frame it this way, is coaches, and especially first-time head coaches, eventually get to a point in their career where they prove whether they should be a head coach or not. You've seen it. I think back to Mike Tice when he was the head coach of the Vikings back in the day. You can run down the list. A number of different guys who got 1 or 2 jobs. Pat Shurmur, who very decidedly proved he was not capable of being a head coach. But oftentimes the guys that you end up looking at who are there for 5, 10, 15 years, the Mike Tomlins, the John Harbaughs of the NFL, they prove it in situations of adversity like this, where so many things have gone wrong that you could easily just go into a tailspin and clean house. What is happening to Brandon Staley right now with the Chargers, and I think they've had way less injuries than the Browns have had. I could be wrong, but in terms of gross statistics and totals, but the significance of the injuries has not been nearly as close in Los Angeles, and yet they're on their way to a losing season and a house cleaning. Stefanski has, in this year, I think, proven that he is a coach who may have just learned this now. We're watching a guy blossom, I think. We're watching a coach mature into his full form. Not his final form, but his full form, to where he's hitting his prime as a head coach. Because what he learned from 2020, when they made the playoffs, when they had more talent, arguably, than they do now, at least in terms of health and availability, yet they had to deal with COVID protocols where they had games rescheduled during the weeks. And then they go into Pittsburgh, and Stefanski can't even coach. And it's Mike Prefer who's coaching them. And they beat the Steelers in their house in a relatively empty stadium on Super Wildcard Weekend for their first playoff win in decades, since I was 3. These are the experiences and the issues that they've run through in the last couple of years. Massive changes at quarterback, maybe brought on by ownership, injuries, just malcontents like Odell Beckham, all kinds of things like that have happened in the last few years that has prepared him for this moment. And now you're seeing the emotion come out when they win games like they did on Sunday, where, look, man, there's a number of different reasons why this shouldn't have gone our way. We turned the ball over 3 times, but we got 4 turnovers. We did X, Y, and Z wrong, but we did X, Y, Z, and then the next letter in the ensuing alphabet right. We did what we had to do to win. We won the game on the margins, and Kevin Stefanski is coaching on the margins right now and winning. I have some small issues that we've discussed and we'll probably discuss again, but overall, at the end of this monologue, I will just say, he's a lot more than just a pretty face now. He's a damn good coach.
Yeah, he is very, very. I've heard many girls refer to him as dreamy. Now I'm sure you
he's
get
like
that a
hot
lot.
dad coach from what I've heard.
Yeah, they really do.
Salt and pepper in the beard.
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely like that. I will just say, I agree with you. I think the point that you hit on that I liked was, because some people want to say, the critics of what we're saying or comments that we've made about him is that, well, he's always been that. It's just now that you figured it out. No, like he has grown into it.
No, he's figuring it out.
And I think this year, I think you're exactly right. I think week to week, he just becomes more of a head coach. Like, I think we always looked at Kevin Stefanski, and fair or unfair, this is just my opinion, but it always felt like he was so, absolutely glued to that play sheet and I don't know if he had the pulse of his team. And you know what? It's not easy to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's why, coaches get hired and fired. It's not easy to do. But to your point, and I think it's a damn good one, like he's finding it out this year to the point where, you're really seeing, without him, you can say, oh, well, the players win games. Yeah, you know what, Kevin, he's won him some games. And I think just him keeping them together and connected and then playing for each other, that's always a cliche in sports that we roll our eyes at and say, whatever, you're playing for the guy next to you. But then when you do have that, like Baltimore has had it, Pittsburgh, I don't know if they have it now, but they've had it before. Those great teams, New England, they were playing for each other. And the Browns feel like that's what they're doing.
So part of me thinks back to like Tomlin's early years in Pittsburgh, and there's a reason I'll bring this up. They had veterans on that roster of a previous era that he kind of slid in and took over for Bill Cowher. You had the Hines Wards and the Joey Porters and those types of guys on that team. You had the James Harrison, who's not a talkative guy, but you had those figures in the locker room, the leaders. Debo. I don't know if the Browns had that leader until recently, and this is going to sound insane, but stick with me here. Kevin Stefanski is 41 years old. Joe Flacco is 38 years old. It's almost as if he has a younger brother on the roster that he fully trusts, who can communicate that message without even using words.
And they look alike. They do.
That's where I first came up with the brother thing.
Yeah.
It was like they actually look similar. And then I looked up his age and I was like, oh, they're only 3 years apart. The main example of like what I'm thinking about when I think about this whole blossoming of Kevin Stefanski, because he shifted in season from being a guy who takes a stat card in the locker room and goes, yeah, we held him to 66 yards passing. Woo! Like, the numbers get old eventually. He doesn't do that in these speeches anymore. He just walks around and goes, damn, man, that was a hell of a team win. We fought our tails off X, Y, and Z. When he called that play on 4th and 3, and Joe Flacco sensed the blitz, Jacksonville sent 7.
Oh, man.
Flacco slides right in the pocket away from pressure, finds David Bell exactly where he's supposed to be, on time, on target, and then Bell does the rest. The touchdown was the cherry on top. The fact that they completed the pass for a first down was the goal. But as Stefanski saw what he envisioned work to perfection with a quarterback who could finally do it the way he wanted it done, he couldn't help but let his emotions out. This is a guy who's stoic, and he freaks out, and he's running down the sideline cheering. I've never seen that much emotion from him in his entire coaching career.
Yep.
That is the moment that I think, no matter how this season goes, that is the moment when he coaches however long he's in Cleveland, whether it's, they make the playoffs and he earns himself another year or two of safety and then they build on it. Who knows? We can't predict it. It's too tough to predict from year to year with this team or this league. There's too much turnover. But if he does continue to coach here for the next 5 years or however long it is, you're going to look back at that moment and think that was when he became the coach that we all knew him and eventually grew to love him for. A guy who has worked hard and said all the right things, and it's been boring, but in that moment let his emotions show because finally it all worked.
All right. Only one little nitpicky thing that, ironically enough, I
think well, this happened like almost in succession.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. There was 2 plays, but one in particular, and it's something that does occur quite a bit. But I was actually tweeting. I was actually texting Nick, and as I'm texting him, I see the bubbles, the little dot, whatever, like you're texting me back. And it was the same thing. So please, we always hear teams getting on schedule. And essentially what that means is, I mean, you know this, but like, hey, you don't want to be second and long, third and long. You get in those second.
The goal is from 1st and 10 to 2nd and 6 or shorter.
Right.
And then 2nd and 6 to 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3 and shorter.
Right. Now, what's happened recently, or it's all season probably, like they'll have 2nd and 1 or 2nd and 2, and all of a sudden it's like we're gonna run wide. Like, okay, even if you get stuffed, okay, even if you're only able to get a yard, hell, you might get the first down, you might be a yard shy, but you're still on schedule. The only way that you can get off schedule is by, now, if you see something every now and then, hey, see something on film and we think we can break one, I get that. But it seems like this is like a random occurrence where it's like 2nd and short, 3rd and short, and they decide to go wide, and it's like, okay, there is the possibility you could break that. There's also the possibility, unfortunately, that your guy isn't going to be able to get to that edge because that edge has been set by the defense, and he loses 4 yards, and now you're out of that position that you were coveting. That's the only thing that's been driving me nuts of late.
It is reductive in nature to look at a play in a vacuum like that because I think everything is interdependent. Like when you're from a play calling perspective,
sure.
Like if it's 2nd and 1, the first thing you're thinking that they're thinking is we're going to run it right up the middle. And so you're thinking, all right, well, I'm going to outsmart them and hit the perimeter. But Kevin Stefanski does love the perimeter more than your average coach.
Yes, he does.
And when it happens in a number of occasions in a game like it did on Sunday, it becomes frustrating because it becomes a frequent thing that is glaring to you. And I had the same thought as you did. But my issue more is again, what we've talked about, getting too cute. The good thing about that is, the silver lining about seeing even those instances was it wasn't like extreme trickery like it had been in previous weeks. Like it wasn't some double reverse type of thing. It was just wide zone left, wide zone right, which is the basis of the offense that he used to coordinate in Minnesota.
Baby steps.
That was also a defense that's good at stringing those out. You have guys like Josh Allen on the edge, not the quarterback, the defensive
He's
end.
more than just a pass rusher. I know they said that on the
football player.
broadcast, but he is more than a pass rusher.
Damn good football player. You got Foye Oluokun at linebacker, who's one of a few talented guys they have back there. I think Devin Lloyd's back there too. Even Caleb Chason. Like, they have guys who are really good at getting on the outside and stringing things out. So you think, well, that's frustrating, but like the results kind of make sense against that matchup. And I get what he's doing there. I'm just glad that they're not taking the massive risks as often as they did a few weeks prior. Like he's kind of trimmed that back, and it's been positive for the most part. And then, of course, almost immediately after, it was 2nd and 1, wide zone loses 2, it's 3rd and 3. They don't get or maybe 3rd and 5. They get 2 yards, and it's 4th and 3, and then the play happens that we already discussed. Right. And
that's the way they do it.
And that's the beauty of where Stefanski is as a coach right now. And I don't know if this holds, but right now all the signs point to me that because Flacco is the quarterback he's working with, it's probably more likely to hold than not, is he didn't compound those mistakes. And his mental acuity in that situation and his understanding of Flacco's, lengthy experience allowed them to execute. And before we could even finish our conversation about that, Flacco's making that throw and there's a touchdown, and we're both putting our feet in our mouth.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Not each other's feet. That would be weird.
No, that'd be a little disgusting. All right, week 15 of the Bold Bald Breakdown. So we're going to put the Browns 31-27 win over the Jags that got them to 8-5 and smack dab in the heart of the playoff race. We're going to put it to bed with numbers that matter. And, Nick, we're going to start with 1. And what is the number 1?
The Browns handed the Jacksonville Jaguars their first road loss of the 2023 season.
Now that was we talked a little bit about that last week. Pretty impressive coming in there that they hadn't had that, but all good things must come to an end, and it came to an end in Cleveland. Keep talking about Joe Flacco. This was a very interesting stat to me that came up in the broadcast. 3. Why don't you go ahead and tell us why that's significant?
He had 3 passing touchdowns, Joe Flacco did, of 30-plus yards on Sunday. 34 yards to David Njoku, 30 yards to David Njoku, 41 yards to David Bell. Now, of course, there weren't many air yards on the Bell touchdown pass. Didn't matter. They executed properly against that defense.
And I believe that the last time that happened for the Browns was 1980
Oh, my God.
when Brian Sipe won the NFL MVP, old number 17. How about that? 1980.
Oh, my God.
Can that be possible?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, yeah, because in NFL history, still very much a run-first league until the last 20 years. The
Yeah.
Browns haven't had a quarterback
I was
capable
thinking
of
like
doing that
Bernie,
consistently.
he had Slaughter and he had
Brennan and
wow. Yeah, I thought if I heard that right, hopefully I did. 'Cause I don't want to. We would never.
I don't have that note.
Okay.
I don't think I'm going to take the time to verify it, but if I have the time, maybe I will.
Well, you just assume that I'm right, and that
You're
saves us a
always
lot
right.
of trouble. All right, we go from 1 to 3 to 4. What's 4?
Baby steps this week. The Browns became the 8th team since 1950 to have 4 or more different starting quarterbacks win a game in a season.
Again, Kevin Stefanski has been marvelous, and I think that maybe just that stat alone, and it's everybody takes credit for that, but certainly your head coach does, no doubt about it. All right, from 4 we go to 7, and this isn't so much a great number, and it's got to be cut down here in the coming weeks.
The game was described on the CBS broadcast as a turnover palooza. 7 combined turnovers between the Browns and Jaguars. That is the most in a game this season by any two teams.
Okay, we're gonna just for a little while longer. We're gonna keep the bad theme going. 27.
The Browns.
Yeah, that's
The Browns lead the NFL with 27 giveaways. Giveaway is the opposite of a takeaway, the negative side of a turnover. Yeah.
Didn't hear that. Yeah, that is. I mean, seriously, you gotta. It's been something all year that's plagued them.
That's what cost P.J. Walker his job.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got to be cleaned up. 282.5. What do we got there?
Joe Flacco's passing yards average through 2 starts is 282.5 yards. That is 101.3 more yards per game than all the other Browns quarterbacks combined.
This one, the last one here from the Jacksonville game, numbers that matter. This one is very, very telling. 311.
Well, that was once a great band in the 90s. Were you a 311 fan?
Why do you guys always have one? You guys always have one segment where you guys speak like in Chinese
Because
as
it
far
always
as I'm
just hits
concerned.
me. In that moment, it always hits.
Our
311.
colleague, by the way, Matt Fontana, is a diehard 311 fan. I think he goes out to that 311 Day concert every year with his brothers. So shout out to Matt Fontana.
There you go.
So I guess then that means I'm an idiot. Like if everybody's getting shout outs for it, then I'm getting.
No. Open your musical mind.
All right, I will. I'll go home and look for them.
You'd probably get through like 2 songs and be like, all right, time to move on.
311.
Joe Flacco's passing total on Sunday, which was the most in a game for a Browns quarterback since Week 4 of 2018.
Wow, telling.
Was it Baker's first start?
Okay, so the Browns knock off the Jags 31-27. They are now 8-5. Again, Week 15 of the Bold Ball Breakdown here on the Big Play Sports Network. Mike Chico Borman. He's Nick Shook, NFL.com, NFL Network. You can follow him on Twitter at the Nick Shook. All right, looking ahead to the Bears. Now, again, before we say, oh, the Bears, they're terrible. And, yeah, I mean, this is a game the Browns should win and certainly should win at home. But the Bears, like other teams, say Denver, say St. Louis, say the Rams.
Ooh.
I know, that's going back a ways.
Last from 2015.
They're playing better. I mean, they've kind of found a little, maybe too little too late for Eberflus and company to save their jobs, but Bears are playing okay. So our first number that matters as far as looking ahead to the Bears game, 2.
The Bears have won 2 straight games for the first time in the Matt Eberflus era. I know, that's how bad they've been.
Wow.
It's also kind of funny because I had a text from a buddy who he sent me a screenshot of the Bears live streaming a Matt Eberflus press conference after they won a game, by the way, like the week after they recorded a win. And in the comments, we had somebody going after Eberflus to the tune of, I hope you're enjoying here. Is this it? I hope you're enjoying your final few weeks in Chicago, you pud whacker.
Ruthless. Absolutely ruthless. By the way, let me just ask you a quick question on them before we go into the next number that matters for the Bears. Do you feel like I feel like he's gone? I feel like, but with Fields, do you think they keep him and maybe trade one of the trade down, get some draft picks and build around him? Like
they should if they're smart, because you're not going to get any better at quarterback with somebody else in there. You're not going to get a C.J. Stroud type of performance, because that's a product of a coaching staff that's coaching to his strengths, a quarterback who is very well equipped to find success with his accuracy in the NFL. Like
Caleb Williams, I feel like is going to take a little while.
Yeah, there was rumors that he had an injured hand, and that contributed to his high interception total against Notre Dame. But like, there's nothing you find in the draft is going to make you any better right away. You might just reset the process that gets you to the same endpoint with a different coaching staff. So why not keep Fields, who just went and won you a game against Detroit, by the way, who looks good when he's healthy and is given ample time to throw. The kid's talented. He's good. Don't be idiots. Spend that capital and build yourself a monster. And by the way, you can sign Justin Fields to a cheaper contract because he hasn't played well enough to deserve a massive deal.
Right.
So why not take the cap savings, invest it elsewhere, use that draft capital that you've built up and spend it on players, use some of it to move around and get somebody. Like, let's talk about building a roster instead of chasing a quarterback.
Which they haven't found since, like, Sid Luckman.
So the guy that
Sid Luckman, for
Jay
God's
Cutler
sake,
was their best other quarterback, right? Justin Fields can be better than that if you actually trust him. We're in a microwave mentality in this league more and more, and it really drives me insane, because what's going to happen is if they move on from him, he's going to go down to a place like Atlanta in his home state of Georgia, and he's going to thrive because he's a good football player.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, this next number that matters for the Bears, this goes back to a number that we were just talking about with the Browns that we unfortunately continue to talk about every week. 3 is this number for the Bears, and it's a biggie.
This is a concerning one. Now, turnovers are very random in football, so they're hard to predict, but the Bears are on a heater lately. They've forced 3+ takeaways in each of the last 3 games for a total of 11 in that span, which is the second most in the NFL in that span. And it's a massive turn from a defense that was not, being so opportunistic early in the season. They had 9 takeaways between weeks 1 and 10. They've got 11 in their last 3. Defense is coming into form right now. A lot of talent in that group. You added Montez Sweat. It's a nice group that with a lot of young talent.
Speaking of Montez Sweat, 3.5. He has how many sacks since joining the Bears?
3.5.
Yeah,
since joining the Bears at the trade deadline.
Self-explanatory. 9 is our next number that matters.
The Bears hadn't won after their bye week in 9 years until Sunday.
Again, another one. Like, when I was looking over these before the show, the Eberflus era, 2 straight for the first, 1-2 straight for the first time, and this one.
Yeah, they've been bad.
They broke, I know they have been, but they broke a 9-year streak of losses following a bye. Usually you're supposed to regroup.
Yeah.
You get healthy, you get away, you get your head clear. These guys just, but they finally.
We're also in a city where the Browns have, until the last 2 years, had really never found any success on opening weekend either. So
True. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and nothing really topped that. All right, 221 is our final one before we go around the league. 221.
That is Justin Fields' rushing total since returning in Week 11.
Look out.
Most among quarterbacks in that span. Last year, the narrative on him, which drove me crazy, was, he's a great running back, but he's not a good quarterback. And it's like, no, he ran because he had no time to throw, and their offense, the receivers aren't getting open. They didn't have any weapons. The only thing he could do to get them into a competitive situation was by running, and he did it damn well.
My only concern with signing Justin Fields is he broken? Because I don't think it's him.
I don't think he's broken.
Yeah, they have this is not on Justin Fields. It's on the Bears. And my only hope is that he hasn't been broken to the point where he can't get back to where, because you're right, he is uber talented.
I think we've talked about a couple quarterbacks who we may have thought have been broken. Zach Wilson being one. Then he goes out and has one of his best games of his career.
Yep.
In the rain against the Texans. One play in particular, and also the game that Fields had against Washington, which has become a sieve of a defense, so it's not a great litmus test, but he balled out in that game earlier in the season. But one play in particular in this most recent game they played on Sunday against the Lions, it's 4th down, and they get the Lions to jump, so they have a free play. And he drops back and sees DJ Moore in single coverage. Moore wins the route on the inside on a 9 and is open. Not super wide open, but Fields, like, with full confidence, knowing he's got a free play, just lets it rip and hits him in stride for a beautiful touchdown. guys who are broken are sensing the rush. They're bringing their eyes down too quickly. They're not making plays like that. Now, that's a simple read, simple throw, but the overarching point is that Justin Fields is still confident enough and comfortable enough to make plays. And that's why I'm saying if you put him in Atlanta or you put him with another team that has a better core, then I think he'll be a star. And if you have the patience that you should have, he'll be a star in Chicago too. Hopefully not this weekend against the Browns, though.
All right, quickly going around the league as we wrap things up. Now, we got to give a shout-out to Papa Shook here. So, Papa Shook, if you're watching, listening, we appreciate it. He said to you after last night, Tommy DeVito, the Giants doing their thing, he asked you this morning before you came in here, what were you wearing?
You should go into the studio today with gold chain on, maybe a tracksuit or a fedora, something like that.
Hey, oh!
Hey, where's the gabagool? Tommy Cutlets leading the Giants to a win. What do you say?
Christopher.
That was a hell of a game last night. God, weird football, but fun football nonetheless. Tommy DeVito leads the Giants back after.
Who is this guy? I mean,
well, he went to Syracuse.
Right.
He's a New Jersey native. He lives with his parents. He was an undrafted free agent. He was third string behind Tyrod Taylor, and he looked horrible in his first appearance because he wasn't prepared because he thought he would play.
Right.
And since then, he started to come into his own.
But see, here's the thing. Because this is the New York Giants, and it's Tommy DeVito, and they don't like Daniel Jones anyway.
We're never going to stop hearing about him? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to. Yeah. All right. I want to go to the other Monday Night Football game there last night because a couple of things I think, well, one of them we already talked about. We have talked about and got confirmed. Like Miami, I mean, tip of the cap to Tennessee. Nobody saw that. I didn't see that coming. But Miami, okay, you will look at the playoff seedings and you'll see, they're high. I'm not buying them. I mean, they're gonna get in, but is that really a team that is all that dangerous? Is that really a team that you think can go all the way to an AFC Championship game? I don't think so.
So Tennessee has a better defense than I think people give them credit for, but they also didn't have Jeffrey Simmons last night, who's their best defensive player.
Yeah,
Harold Landry's been on a heater. He had 3 sacks last night, but the Dolphins don't have much of an explanation for how badly they played in the middle quarters of this game offensively, other than the fact that they didn't have Tyreek Hill on the field because he was hurt.
That's my second point. MVP, everybody said, well, who you got to ask, this answers the question. Who would you rather Mike McDaniel take off the field? I know the obvious question is always you can't take off the quarterback, but you know what? You take Tyreek Hill off that field.
Quarterback looks pretty average.
And they are nowhere near the engine that they should be or they are with Tyreek Hill.
No, I think you give a lot of credit to the Titans for making the picture messier for Tua last night. He was very hesitant in the pocket, but he also didn't have Tyreek to turn to. And it's no coincidence that as soon as Tyreek came back from an ankle injury that cost him, 2.5 quarters, their offense found its stride again and was able to go down and kick a game-tying field goal, and then they got 2 short fields and produced 2 touchdowns off of it. I said that they're part of the fraud category because while they have games where they put up big numbers, it seems somewhat unsustainable without Tyreek. And I think every team's probably got an X factor or a linchpin on their roster. Patrick Mahomes or Travis Kelce in Kansas City, for example. But this one just feels so glaring. They just look so different with and without Hill on the field that I just don't. And the way their defense laid down last night, my God. They have talent. Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard, Bradley Chubb. You can keep going down. Jerome Baker. Like, there's a number of different guys in that roster. Yeah, Cleveland guy. And they let Will Levis and DeAndre Hopkins carve them up for 2 touchdown drives in the last 4 minutes, and it's like they weren't even out there. I was stunned by how quickly the Titans moved the ball down the field. The Titans are not a good offense. This is a team that had, no ability to move the football against teams that actually like to blitz a lot in the last month. Tampa Bay completely shut them down. I saw it happen to them 2 or 3 weeks in a row. Will Levis looked pretty good, but I've seen other teams do better against him defensively. So I think that there's some serious fraudulence in this team, but it's a good time to have Max, formerly known as HBO Max, because you can watch Hard Knocks in seasons with the Miami Dolphins. That is not a plug. That's just me looking forward to seeing how they capture and document this meltdown in a battle of who could melt down harder last night between the Titans and the Dolphins.
Yeah. Speaking of meltdowns, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and they walked it back. Yesterday we had Carrington on the show, and Patrick Mahomes' show is with Carrington, and I saw where he walked it back yesterday on his show.
Well, why? Because he got a good look at the tape?
Yeah.
It's indisputable evidence.
It does help to see when the guys just I mean, that was – what are you going to do?
First off, speaking of meltdown, was a fantastic top-tier 5-star segue.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a pro stuff. When they put you in the Hall of Fame someday,
Thank you.
we'll look back on moments like this. Clip this for future reference. Deep in the vault.
Boom, missed it.
I know. He's still thinking about 311. I think what we saw in Kansas City on Sunday evening was the frustration of knowing that there is not somebody reliable to turn to like a Tyreek Hill outside of Travis Kelce just coming to fruition. Like, I mean, Kadarius Toney has made a number of mistakes, mostly mental errors.
Him 2 games this year.
He cost them that game, even though it's funny because he was the one who caught the lateral from Kelce.
Right.
And then the flag, of course, it's on Toney. Like, it's guaranteed. It's like it's as reliable as death and taxes right now with his team, is that Tony's going to find a way to make a mental mistake. But there's also guys like Marquez Valdes-Scantling who drops a perfectly placed touchdown pass in a home loss, like in a primetime home loss that you should have won that game. Guys are not doing their job around him outside of Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. And I think he's frustrated because he's an elite player and expects that type of contribution.
That's what it was, because that's not Mahomes. Mahomes is a guy that, I mean, I know you might
And there's
say,
he's friends with Josh Allen, and they're playing the Bills. So, like, there's an added, level of, like, well, first they got to keep, pace for the top seed in the AFC. And it's also his buddy on the other sideline. The Bills, they have history. So it's like they want to beat them. And that he feels robbed of a spectacular play by an official, but in reality, it was.
And he went back and had to apologize to Josh too, because he said he's like, it's not Josh's fault. I acted like it told. But you're right. At the end of the day, okay, he thought it was an egregious call or whatever it was. He had a chance to go back. Really, at the end of the day, he's frustrated as hell.
Yeah,
I mean, he can't count on his offensive line is having issues.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to wide receivers dropping passes and. It's Travis Kelce or bust. That's it.
It's been the story since week 1. They had a number of drops in week 1. I feel bad for guys like Sky Moore, who would probably be good on another team, but in Kansas City, he's just asked to do too much and he just can't handle it.
Justin Scott,
there's
or
a number.
Watson. I'm
yeah,
sorry, Justin
it's
Watson.
Justin Watson. You had Justin Ross, and he got a little bit of off-field issues. It's just a number of different guys that just are not performing. Like, I almost feel bad that they don't have Juju Smith-Schuster anymore, because at least he would catch the football. It's a bad situation. This has been the narrative in Kansas City. You know how we sit here and talk about Joe Flacco and stuff? That's been the discussion in Kansas City for weeks now. So to see Mahomes explode like that, it's just been like a bubbling volcano ready to burst.
Real quick, could have written him off, and probably many did. But Jake Browning says not so fast in his Lee Corso. I think we all did. I mean, why wouldn't you?
The drop inspiring in Washington.
Yeah. Do you think, are we taking them seriously now?
Yeah. Zach Taylor, another coach, is doing a hell of a job.
Yeah.
Really scheming to his quarterback's strengths, not asking him to be a hero, just asking him to execute what he can execute and just operate this offense as I design it. And it helps that the running game has returned with Joe Mixon, who's running really hard right now. The passing game, the numbers are there, but it's not in the same fashion as Burrow, yet they can still run a lot of this offense as if they had Burrow. The big question now is, when does it all fall apart? I don't know. There's only a month left. And right now, they're not the team that we were like, well, they're toast. Like, they're done.
The Browns' last game of the season, by the way. Last game
Could
of the regular season.
Could be a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, one last thing before I let you go here. When we look at the NFL as it stands right now, Week 15, I think you got San Francisco, who they had that little lull right after they lost to the Browns. They're back, and I think they're clearly the best team in the NFC. When I say clearly, I mean by a pretty decent margin. I think in the AFC, it's Baltimore, and I think they even have a pretty nice margin. Agree or disagree?
The only team I really trust right now is San Francisco. I think Baltimore has the winning factor that is unquantifiable in that team right now, and a lot of that is culture, as we talked about.
Mark Andrews has got to hurt him eventually, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's his boy.
It feels somewhat held together by paper clips.
Okay.
Not quite chewing gum and paper clips, but it feels like they're like the Rams game. They could have lost that game.
Yeah.
They have been in some situations where they could have lost, and they found ways to win. I don't trust them nearly as much as the 49ers look like the best team in football. This is the first time I felt this good about a team since 2016. It was like week 13 or 14. I think I was doing your show from LA and was asked a question about who do you think is going to the Super Bowl or who's going to win the NFC. And I was like, it might have even been before we even broached that topic. And I was like, I'm just telling you right now, the Atlanta Falcons are winning the NFC and going to the Super Bowl.
I
They were
remember
like,
that. I do.
like, what? I'm like, watch them play football. Who was the offensive coordinator of that team? Kyle Shanahan. Yeah.
Yes.
So I trust the 49ers more than any team. I think the AFC is relatively wide open, and I think the Browns could have something to say about it, even if it's a massive overachievement.
Okay, Browns-Bears this Sunday, 1 o'clock, Cleveland Browns Stadium. Prediction, go.
Let's go at home. Let's go Browns 27. Bears 19.
Ooh, okay. All right.
Justin Fields will find a way in the end zone a couple times.
Yeah, I think he's going to hurt him with his legs. I don't think it'll be something that takes over the game, but I think he'll hurt him with his legs. You got a stat there?
No, it's
Oh,
just,
I thought you were.
that was me
Okay.
acknowledging you while I was taking a swig of water.
I'll go. I will go Browns. Bears defense really isn't that good. I'll go Browns 30 and Chicago 17. 30-17
far away.
Browns. Yeah.
27-19, 30-17.
Yeah, 30-17 Browns.
I like weird scores.
And I know. Anymore, it's almost like if somebody says, I think they're going to win 21-14, you're like, boring.
Yeah, pretty much.
Come on, man. All right, that is week 15 of the Bold Bald Breakdown. Continue to follow Nick Shook, NFL.com, NFL Network, around the NFL. By the way, my buddy, our buddy John down there works for the Airport Authority. He said to me again this past week how much he loves that Around the NFL show. With you guys. He told that to you one time he met you.
Yes.
But he reiterated, he's like, the chemistry those guys have, he goes, like, they can give each other hell, but at the same time, like, it's not overboard.
Yeah.
He goes, it's so well done. So you have a chance to check out Around the NFL.
Yeah, I show up there periodically, sometimes for as many as 20 minutes at a time.
And they always have a grunt. Don't they have somebody?
They have sound drop because I lift weights because I'm almost spilling my water, but large human. It's part of my character on the show.
See, his calves look like basketballs. All right, so that's going to do it.
That's a tumor.
I will be back with you here in just a few minutes as we will shift gears. We'll play a little fair or foul in the second hour. Also, Anthony Kastrovitz, MLB.com, Shohei Ohtani. Okay, how does this money thing really break down? And does MLB need to do something to close a loophole? And also, and maybe most importantly, Bob Nightingale, USA Today, wrote a tremendous article how the media embarrassed themselves in trying to report what was going on. I know it's all about being first and all, but wow, did they blow it on many levels. We'll talk to Anthony Kastrovitz coming up at 1:40. All right, so the Chico Borman Show continues with more right after this on the Big Play Sports Network. All righty, welcome back. It is the Chico Borman Show here on the Big Play Sports Network. So great to have you along. And, of course, you can stream us live on Twitter at Chico Show CLE. Also on YouTube if you are not subscribed already. We'll let it go this time. But as soon as you are on there, type in the Chico Borman Show, hit subscribe, and you'll be ready to go. Available wherever you get your podcasts to, Apple, Spotify, doesn't matter, and streaming live on the iHeartRadio app. All right, coming up in about, 25 minutes or so, we will talk to Anthony Kastrovitz, MLB.com, the very latest on Ohtani, and how really, not really the very latest. There is no very latest. Just breaking it down. And more importantly, I want to get his thoughts on what Nightingale ripped his colleagues. Because, I mean, they were following planes that he wasn't even on, and they're like, oh, this is a disgrace that he won't tell anybody. And Nightingale's like, actually, this should be celebrated. And he even admitted, he took blame as well. He's like, I fell for it, and I started. He goes, but it's really sad when a guy does want to be just kind of professional about it, and we rip him for it. And the more I read it, I'm like, this he's dead on. So I'm curious what Castro thinks, and I'm also curious what his latest pun game will bring to the table. So he will be here at 1:40. All right, good stuff with Nick Shook. Hey, first and foremost, as I said, it has been a long, long time since the Browns were 8-5, since the Browns were, in December and in the heart of the playoff race. Enjoy this. And like I said, yes, 2020, hey, beggars can't be choosers, and it was still nice, but there was something missing. There was a big thing missing. I mean, Jimmy Donovan, the only thing missing is you. And, yeah, I mean, we were grateful that we had football. We were certainly grateful that we had Browns football, and it was meaningful football, and it was playoff football over the Steelers. But when we can all go out and enjoy it the way that we are doing now and should be doing now. I think last week, Boom, what do you think? I think that last week, the tickets that were available late, and I do think that was a product of the Denver and the Rams losses. Now, it wasn't like egregious. It wasn't like there was like a whole bunch of empty seats and nobody was making noise. But I do think, when over so many years, fans finally do. I wondered if it would ever happen. It's kind of like is LeBron ever really going to retire? Like he just keeps going and going and going. Are the Browns fans ever going to really like push back after being just, kicked in the face years and years and years? And I think over the last few years, we've seen a little bit of that. And I think maybe that was a little bit on Sunday, like, we believe, we're excited, but we got to see him get back on track. And they did against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, absolutely, Chico. I'm kind of perplexed by it, to be honest, because I think there was a lot of reason for encouragement coming out of, despite the fact that you lost and it kind of ended ugly. I think there was a lot of reason to feel good at the same time. So I don't know. I didn't consider it as like fans pushing back. Like to me, the fans pushing back is like, oh, it's 16 parade.
No. I don't push back. Is what I'm saying is they were hesitant to sell out. I mean, if they beat Denver and they beat the Rams, that place is sold out, no questions, and there's no tickets that are $8 to get in. I think it's not. Yeah, you got too far into the semantics there. Like, essentially what I was saying is they were just a little, like Nick said, a little hesitant to jump back on board because they're saying to themselves, it was 7-3, and now they're 7-5, and are they going to be they're not going to go on a losing streak. And then, coming home, the home fans and doing what they did, I think brought them back. Like, I think Sunday is going to be, that place is going to be loud.
Yeah. Okay. See, now when you put it that way, I do agree with where you're coming from in that there's just a lot of uncertainty. Like you saw a little bit of it from Flacco, but it wasn't enough. Obviously didn't get the job done. Questions about the defense on the road.
Oh, you're talking about the Rams game?
Yeah.
Or okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, I do anticipate now that the crowd at first, or Brown Stadium is going to be rocking, Chico. Almost called it by a prior name.
Said with conviction by Mike Bohm. That's right. He said, Chico, it's going to be rocking. It will be rocking. It will be rocking on Sunday against Chicago. But again, 8-5, right in the heart of it. You got 4 games left, and you got Chicago, you got Houston, you've got the Jets, and then you've got the Cincinnati Bengals. So, man, enjoy this. I think there is playoffs coming, and it's just it's a lot of fun. I mean, it really is a lot of fun. Last night, I'm telling you, I feel better and better now. Like I kind of backed off my stance on Tyreek Hill as far as MVP. Oh, by the way, Tyreek Hill has to be fined because I don't know if you guys remember this. Bohm, if you remember this, TJ Watt, when he was chasing down the sack record, he said that at halftime, because it was like one of those shared sacks or whatever. And he said he admitted he went into the locker room. He said he was joking, but he went into the locker room and texted or used his phone to see if they credited it to him. The NFL fined him $10,000 because you can't use your cell phone during you can't at all during a game, right? Tyreek Hill, there is a sound clip. I don't anticipate you have it. That's okay. But Tyreek Hill, when he got hurt, and then after the game, he said, yeah, somebody rolled up on my ankle, and then I went into the locker room, and I'm like, I got to go out there and play. And then I texted my wife, and my wife said, get your ass back out there. And like as soon as he said that, somebody else said it about, well, you can't use so we will see. We will see if Tyreek, because that's, shame. You're not allowed. I do know why they do it, but I was kind of surprised. But again, it made my case that, yeah, I know Tua's the quarterback. Yeah, I know that QB is pretty damn important. But damn it, you take Tyreek Hill off the field, it's just they are nowhere near the offense that they would be. And that is the sign of an MVP. So he's got to be. And maybe he won't. Maybe he absolutely has to get 2,000 yards for them to consider him. But man, he's had a hell of a season. He really has. All right. What else we got? The Cavaliers fall last night. Okay. Hey, you beat Orlando in their place. At your place, and then you lost to Orlando at their place. I thought, it wasn't a great performance, but you're going to have those. They also had some injuries again. But now they are home to the Boston Celtics tonight, on the road against the Boston Celtics tonight. Cavs 13-10, Boston 16-5. So they've got 2 in a row against the Celtics. So we'll see how that plays out. All right, before we get to Anthony Kastrovitz and talking about Shohei Ohtani and all of the hoopla surrounding that, let us play a little Fair or Foul.
Well, Chico.
Well, good afternoon, Bohm.
Good afternoon, good sir. All right. I want to start with something that I think is being a little bit blown out of proportion. But people are making a fuss about it, Chico, on Brown's Twitter. People are Xing like crazy about it. So Joe Flacco, of course, is being kept on the Browns practice squad, right? So theoretically, if Flacco were to agree with it, he could sign with another team. That being said, the Browns have offered reassurance that Joe wants to be here. They have it worked out. They've talked to his agent about it. Fair or foul, do you think there's any concern whatsoever with Flacco being a practice squad player?
Are you sure there's concern?
Yeah, people are up in arms about it.
Because they really think that, again, real quick, when you're on the practice squad, anybody has a chance to sign you from another team if they want. But he has the decision.
Yes.
Yeah, he's not going.
Theoretically, someone could just offer him $10 million and he could be like, all right, I'm bailing.
I agree with you, Bohm. I think if it is out there, I haven't seen it. I believe you. But if it is out there, it's stupid. It's ridiculous.
If I just saw one tweet about it, I wouldn't have brought it up. But I've seen it like
Boom,
I gotta
put
say, it's
my
in the
full,
dozens.
you know this. I put my full trust in you.
There is
Crossing
a
my toes.
pocket of Browns fans who are very alarmed right now that Joe Flacco could be pried away.
There's so many other things to worry about. Don't let that be one of them. My God.
Now, with the Browns defense, you brought it up kind of earlier in the show. You mentioned him, and I forgot to ask you this yesterday, but JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah has played spectacularly. It feels like he hasn't quite gotten the attention that, say, Myles Garrett or Denzel Ward or other players on that Browns defense have gotten. Fair or foul, JOK is the unsung hero of this Browns defense.
Yeah, totally fair. I think Nick said it verbatim, to be honest with you, because it was, Miles and Denzel are, and they are. I mean, they're the superstars, but I think the guy more than anybody else, and MJ Emerson had a great game, but JOK, this has really been day one. I mean, he has come out of he came out of the gates firing, and he hasn't stopped all season. I mean, that's what you saw, him playing like at Notre Dame. And I think when you first get to the NFL, there is that, they always talk about it with, those hybrid types like he is. Like, man, you want to play fast, but if you have to think a little bit, which they do have to think a little bit when they first get to the league, because they want to make sure they're not making a huge mistake. Once they get to the, I'm not thinking, I'm just reacting, now you get Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah unedited. And he is an absolute maniac out there. I love him.
Chico, week in, week out, he's making plays, tackles for loss, sideline to sideline. Just an incredible athlete, phenomenal finisher. JOK is a stud. But I digress in that regard. Okay, Chico. So I want to ask you, fair or foul, Corey Bojorquez needs to be in the Pro Bowl this year. Get Corey Bojorquez to the Pro Bowl.
I don't know who are the other punters. Like, I think he's got to be in the conversation. I don't know who. How many do they take? Who are the other? I can't sit here and say I know all the averages for everybody in the league. I know he's one of the top tier punters.
I know that going into last week he was averaging the most net yards per punt. But now, granted, one thing we're an area where he does struggle, and this is where I think it could potentially hinder those chances, is his ability to pin the ball inside the 20. A lot of times he will boot those monster punts, but then you'll see them skate out of the end zone.
I got to say, if our biggest issue right now is getting Corey Bojorquez to the Pro Bowl, we are in really, really good shape. Either we're in really good shape or really bad shape, because you could look at that as, well, all right, we've talked up the draft enough, so did you see the video, though, of Dustin Hopkins getting the special teams game ball? Did you see it's not the video, it's like a still photo.
Bojorquez's eyes.
Yeah, he
face.
just looks like, how about no, I'm sure it's
no love from coach.
Yeah. No,
man's just got cold shouldered.
Special teams has been huge.
Yes.
Huge this year. And yes, that's why we made such a big deal. With those that thought we were overreacting to Cade York, they'll figure it out. No. These are when you are a playoff caliber team and you are in the hunt for the postseason, one of the reasons you're in the hunt is because of Dustin Hopkins, and one of the reasons you're going to do well, you hope, in that hunt is because of Dustin Hopkins and your special teams. It is a very big deal.
Shout out to Bubba V and that elite Brown special teams unit.
Bubba V.
Bubba V.
Yeah, you guys are on that nickname kind of level, right? No Bubba Ventrone, no Mr. Ventrone. You just call him
Too many syllables.
Bubba V.
Bubba V.
Ventrone is too many syllables. Ventrone.
It's one more than V.
Ventrone.
Bubba V rolls off the tongue easier, okay, Chico? I mean, fair or foul, that's totally fair. Bubba V. All right. But anyways, I think this is my last Browns one. We'll see. But I wanted to ask you do a little bit of philosophizing with you, Chico, because so Myles Garrett did have one monumental sack in Sunday's matchup. However, it would not show up on the stat sheet because it came on a 2-point attempt. Fair or foul, Chico? Those sacks should be counted as stats.
Foul.
You don't think so?
Extra point? No.
All right, is that all you have to say?
No. This is what you. I mean, come on, Bohm. There's
What?
so many other things we're talking about. I mean, come on.
That one was left over from yesterday.
All right.
All right, so I want to ask you about
and
Tommy
it tasted
DeVito.
like a leftover too.
So, fair or foul, there's no chance that Tommy DeVito overtakes Danny Dimes with that contract next year.
Fair. I mean, they're paying somebody that much money. He's obviously going to play. But I just what I feel like is, and you always say this, they do this anyway. If they don't like the starting quarterback and he throws an interception, they're already booing. But now with one of their own, your boy DeVito being the backup and it being the New York Giants, like, yeah, this is going to be a bigger deal. No question about it.
Totally, Chico.
Totally, Chico. Totally, Bo.
All right, so I want to ask you. Sorry, I'm doing it again.
That's all right, Bo. You just take a deep breath. Take a deep breathe in.
No, I mean, like, I kept saying, setting up my questions, like, I want to ask you about this.
Yeah, it's okay.
So on and so forth.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go to the NBA because amongst other media members, guys like Stephen A. Smith are putting the likes of Zion Williamson on blast for his health habits. And there are reports leaking, and, you know, it hasn't ever been, like, confirmed nor denied by the organization.
Who again?
I didn't save the report. But there's speculation that maybe the Pelicans are frustrated with Williamson's.
That's why I asked you, Williamson. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Sorry. So I misunderstood you. Stephen A. Smith had this quote that he said on Zion, in which he said, "I'm not exaggerating. I'm quoting people. You got chefs in New Orleans who love him. They're looking for him. Every chef wants to meet him. The word on Zion Williamson is out that he'll eat the table." Fair or foul, Chico, this is ultimately going to be the downfall of Zion Williamson's career.
Oh, my God. Extremely fair. Yeah, this is a major, major issue. I know he had a great game the other night. I think last night. I think he had like 29 or something. And, I mean, his talent is incredible. But, like, you can't just – you gotta step away from the buffet table, for God's sake. I mean, you're a professional athlete. And – and you have knee issues, like it's just, and if you look at him, like look at a picture of him now, like you can see that this ain't just little baby fat. I mean, we're seeing like rolls and shit on this dude.
I almost reached for the dump button.
He's yeah, it's and like I said, it's sad because he is just an incredible talent. But, my God, dude, you got to take care of yourself. And he's not. He doesn't care. Amazing.
Yeah, you hate to see talent like that not reach its potential.
I'll tell you what I hate to see. Is this true? Corky and Lenny's is closed?
Really? The main one?
Huh?
The main one?
I don't know. It says, according to sources, they left the door open for a possible reopening at a smaller location. Oh, I love Corky.
I used to work there back in the day as a busboy. I hated it.
Well, yeah,
I'll just leave that there.
That doesn't shock me because they probably said you had to get up at a certain time and you had to be
No,
there.
actually, I worked evenings.
Well, but still, you probably said
that was not the issue.
You had to be there at a certain time. And
I'm not going to put them on blast over the air, but that was not the issue.
Well, they're still people still love them anyway.
Yes, they do. Yeah. That is fair or foul.
That was a stirring fair or foul, Bohm. That was very, very well done. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We've got Anthony Castrovitz coming your way here in just a bit. Talk a little Shohei Ohtani. Also talk about should there be a loophole or a loophole that needs to be fixed by Major League Baseball as far as the deferred money and whatnot. We'll talk about that with Anthony. When we come back, though, the transfer portal, they're hitting it fast, they're hitting it hard, and there is one name that is surfacing now for the Buckeyes at quarterback. We'll mention that. And should these numbers, I think it's 14 now, have entered the portal. Should that be a concern, or is it people blowing that out of proportion? We'll talk about that when we come back. It is the Chico Borman Show. More to come right here on the Big Play Sports Network. All righty, welcome back. It is the Chico Borman Show. Final 20 minutes or so. We will be talking to Anthony Kastrovitz, MLB.com, here in just a few moments. Shohei Ohtani getting paid, but he's going to wait a little bit on that. And, that's when that does hit the books, can you still – well, it's Fox. They've got a ton of money. Anyway, we'll talk about that and some of the coverage of it last week as well. Real quick, I wanted to get to this on Ohio State. So, Riley Leonard from Duke, I believe, is now the quarterback at Notre Dame. He transferred. They just announced that. So apparently, Ohio State was in on him. The other one that they were in on was the kid out of Washington State. Is it Cam
Ward?
Cam Ward, yeah. They are apparently talking to him and, trying to get – but a lot of people in Columbus and just football in general are going, oh, my God, Ohio State, 14 players in the portal. Something's going wrong with Ohio State. I'm not going to say that is everything great? No, but I do think that people are getting a little over their skis a little bit with this thing because, A, we're very early in this process, and B, this is what happens in college football. And really, I mean, Kyle McCord was a big one. I mean, it's your quarterback. But, okay, he wanted assurance that he'd be the starter, and he wasn't going to get that. Julian Fleming kind of surprises me. But at the same time, if I look at Julian Fleming, I say, here's a guy who probably he knows that there's a lot of great young talent behind him and that they're going to want to get them on the field. He probably wants to go somewhere where he's going to be targeted a bunch, where he can, again, at the end of the day, think of it as a job interview for the NFL. So if you got a better chance to get that job by going to another team, then that's what you're going to do. Chip Trainum and Evan Pryor in the running back room, little bit surprising, but still we don't know what's going to happen with Travion Henderson if he's back. It's going to be Dallin Hayden. We knew that. I like Trainum a lot, but I also think, again, a lot of this is contingent on what's going to happen with Travion Henderson and whether or not he's coming back. I'm hearing that there is a very good possibility that he does come back, but we'll see. To be honest with you, the one that might make the biggest impact is Joe Royer, the tight end who was behind, and Kate Stover we think is going pro. Like, he was a guy that they like a lot, and they weren't anticipating that, but it happened. But I don't think, I mean, look, there are things that you don't lose to Michigan 3 consecutive years, and it's just no big deal, right? But at the same time, this is the portal now. Like Ryan Day said it the other day, and coaches say it now, the ones that have actually bought in. Dabo Sweeney doesn't. But for the coaches that have bought in and they realize this is just how it's going to be, you heard Ryan Day say it the other day, like, you're now building your team year to year. And you might say, well, yeah, you're doing that anyway. When you look at recruiting, when he says build his team, he's not just looking at, okay, I mean, you're looking at recruiting and who's, what's going to be an area of need, say, in a couple of years. And now, because of the transfer portal and because of all of the other factors, it might not be, it's not something that you're planning 2, 3, certainly not 4 years out. I mean, guys aren't staying that long anyway. But now you just have so many guys getting in that portal as fast as they can. That's kind of the way it's going to be. But this Cam Ward, I guess they liked Riley Leonard a lot. I don't think it's a big deal he goes to Notre Dame. There's a couple defensive tackles I've heard, too, from Texas A&M. Actually, defensive tackles and a stud offensive lineman from A&M, because remember, Jimbo Fisher is out, that could be coming Ohio State's way. But I would just say, things have not been great over the last couple of months. I'm not trying to hide that fact. What I will say, though, is, this is what college football is now. This is what it's all about. And so, that's going to be the story, and we just have to, roll with it. But the idea that, like, the program's burning down to the ground is a little bit much. All right. Boy, we thought that Nashville might burn down the way things were going at those meetings, baseball meetings not too long ago. Anthony Kastrovich joining us from MLB.com, MLB Network. Follow him at Kastrovich. Of course, you know him, the master of the pun. No, I always do this now. This is boom. This is an everyday thing or every interview thing. Kastrovich says that his crew pulled an all-nighter in the pun lab, and this was the best they could come up with. Slow pay Otani. Boom, your first reaction was not a good one. He says we hope to have a better pun ready by 2034.
I'm trying to set up his shot. I apologize.
That's all right. That's all right. Castro, it is great to have you on the show. How you doing, bud?
Great to be here. I'm a little tired from the all-night, pun gathering, but we're getting through. We're plowing through.
I mean, do you ever feel like you've got to be on, like for instance, if let's say like a girl brings home a comedian to meet their parents, right? And like the parents, I wonder if they feel like, all right, you got to say something funny. Like, do people when they meet you go, all right, come on, give me a pun. What do you got? What do you got? I mean, it feels like a lot of pressure on you, man.
But I will say that the great Ken Rosenthal at the winter meetings started to call me the pun king. So that's
feather in your cap right there.
Which by the way could sort of be a Halloween, around the Halloween time, pun king, but there's probably a way to do something with that. But no, that was the first time, Chico, where I did start to feel a little pressure. I'm not going to lie.
He never turns it off. All right, Castro, before we get into the specifics, and I know one of your colleagues, Tom Verducci, kind of did a great job laying it out and the Shohei contract. I want to go back to an article. Honestly, I thought it was very well done, very well said, and I think we all kind of needed to look over it. But Bob Nightingale, USA Today, did you read the piece that I'm referring to about?
I did.
I'm just curious, your takeaways on that.
I thought it was a strong piece. I think Bob Nightingale has probably been as guilty of that as anybody, and he's the first to admit it in that piece. You know that there is a rush to be first in our business as opposed to being the first to be correct. When I was on a beat covering a team, I felt that urgency to try to break everything, and had good and bad experiences with that. And it's not my game. It's not my thing I'm interested in doing in journalism, is, being a rumor monger. But I do see the appeal of being first. I get it. And these are big stories. Shohei Ohtani is the biggest story in our game. Not just this winter, but really in a long time, in terms of free agency. I know Aaron Judge was last year coming off of 62, but Ohtani is on another level in terms of the international intrigue with this particular player. So that rush to be first can bring out the worst in people. But I also think that, when you are in that world, and when it is your, when your reporting does revolve around, reporting deals as they happen, and this pertains to any sport, you're in a position where you can be used by people, unfortunately. And that's what I didn't like about it, in my experiences with it, on the agency side and sometimes on the team side. But as Bob said in his piece, 95% of the time when you hear about a transaction, it's coming from the agency, even a trade. You're hearing, you don't know the pieces necessarily coming back, because you just know the one piece that the agency's player was involved in. And it just puts you in a bad position sometimes. And I think that's what happened with Ohtani. I think there's probably some truth to I'm not going down the wild conspiracy theory road, but I do think there's probably some truth to the idea that the Blue Jays and reports surrounding the Blue Jays were used in this process to get the best possible deal from the Dodgers, which I believe, and a lot of people believe, is where Shohei Ohtani wanted to be all along.
Yeah, just to provide a little context, because I just said, did you read the Nightingale article? And then I didn't really explain. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't really explain what it said. And essentially, he was saying we need to do better as journalists and covering the sport. And you're right. He said, myself included, we went crazy with the planes taking off. It reminded me of LeBron and Dan Gilbert. They were following a plane. They're like, oh, Shohei's on this plane. He's going to Toronto. They're like, no, he's sleeping in Newport Beach right now. So he's definitely not on that plane. But
well, and just a real quick on that. I enjoyed tracking that plane as much as anybody. Don't get me wrong. But did I really think this is? There were moments, I guess, when my colleague John Palmrosi said he's entered Toronto. I'm like, okay, I guess so. But it did seem a little sketchy that he left first thing in the morning, for an athlete. But also, you don't have to fly across the continent to agree to terms on a deal. That's it's not necessary,
right?
To sign a term letter or anything like that. It's just, you don't have to physically be present. So unless they were planning some major splash, which seemed counter to the whole way that this free agency was navigated, it did seem a little suspect that he would fly all the way across the continent to announce that I'm a Blue Jay now. He could have done that. He probably announced the Dodgers deal from his couch with his dog that doesn't have a name. So
yeah, have we gotten the dog's name yet? Still nothing.
No, he'll have a press conference soon, and I'm sure it'll come up. But I'm wondering if the dog's name is deferred, just like most of the money.
Anthony Kastrovitz, MLB.com. All right, one last thing on that before we move into the specifics of the Ohtani deal. You kind of hit on it that, like, when you're doing that sort of reporting, you do get used either by the agent or the team.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, how difficult does it become easier as you gain experience because the relationships you trust and they trust you more? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like, for somebody on the outside looking in that just says, oh, well, he's reporting this, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of work that goes into that. So does it get easier with time?
In some ways, because you do develop those relationships, and you develop a level of trust that goes both ways. But at the end of the day, I mean, you gotta measure in that world. You have to measure the upside versus the downside. The downside is pretty drastic. Your reputation, perhaps your career, versus the upside of, hey, Shohei Ohtani signing with the Dodgers. I had it first, and people forget in 5 minutes. Once it's out there, and it's true, it's everywhere. So it's really a risky equation, and I'm not poo-pooing, the style and the industry. Because I'm a consumer as well. I'm a sports fan, and I like
Sure.
feeling like I'm the first to know about things from following someone on Twitter, and but there's just a lot of it's a very risky business, because you can really affect people's lives. I think people's lives got affected by this Blue Jays stuff over the weekend. I mean, fans were legitimately excited, and in Toronto had reason to believe that they were getting their guy, and it's frustrating when you don't, and the team's involved, and the negotiation gets involved, and that's when you become the story, right? Is when, did that affect the negotiations with the Dodgers? It may have, and then you can't tell the story of the Shohei Ohtani contract now without all that craziness on Friday. It's part of the story, and that's not what you want. You don't want to become the story as a journalist. So it's dicey, but yeah, I mean, you do develop a trust level and all that. It's just, it's hard to do. It's really hard to do. It's hard to be consistent. There's some people who are great at it, and have established a brand and a career out of it, to their credit, but they're few and far between, because it's a really difficult thing to do, because you're dealing with the self-interest of the agents, the self-interest of the team. Different people have reasons for wanting things out or not wanting things out at any given moment, and you're kind of caught in the middle of that.
Did I hear right that somebody was on the tarmac waiting for Shohei to exit the plane?
A lot of people, Chico. A lot of people, fans, reporters, cameramen. Yeah, it was a lot of people, and out steps the dude from Shark Tank with his twin kids, his twin 5-year-olds.
Yeah,
wondering what the heck just happened.
So, okay, another aspect of this is that, and I think Rosenthal might have written one. There were a few pieces written about it that, man, here's a perfect opportunity for Shohei Ohtani in baseball to really get his name out there. I think maybe what we found, because you're always skeptical, which I think that's just how we are. We're built that way. We're always, there's something more involved. Is it possible that Shohei Ohtani is just one of those guys, as great as he is, incredible as he is, he just doesn't, I'm very private. I don't need to, I don't need all this attention. Did he have, you think, any sort of, I don't want to say requirement, but somewhat of an obligation to kind of let people in on some things, or is that just his prerogative?
Well, he's very private. There's no doubt about that. He does not speak to the media except for after his starts as a pitcher, which he's not going to be a pitcher in 2024. So we're all wondering, okay, what's this going to be like? Is he going to speak after games still, occasionally as a designated hitter?
He'll write you notes.
I don't know. He does not make many media appearances. And when he does, there's of course a language barrier that, there's a divide as it is. He has a lot of personality on the field and in the dugout. And you see there's great gifts of Shohei Ohtani, and he's just a freak of nature, talented athletically, which kind of sells itself. He definitely wanted privacy in this matter. I wasn't all hung up about it the way some in my business were. I do understand, like, there certainly for reporters, it would have been a benefit to know, okay, these are the 5 finalists, and then we could all go crazy speculating which of the 5 or whatever. But it turned out to be, a really interesting, gripping cross sports. I think even casual or non-baseball fans became hip to what was going on with Shohei Ohtani, as the nature of this reporting was, and the flight tracking and all of that. And at the end of the day, Chico, I mean, he gave us all a really good story. He gave us a $700 million contract and then a follow-up, which the details of the contract, which are unprecedented beyond the number, the way it's constructed is so interesting.
And
that, I mean, a colleague of mine, Mark Feinsand, at MLB.com, he was on CNBC yesterday, so we've crossed over. 1 minute he's talking about Shohei Ohtani, and then you can give some stock tips, and we got cross. He's definitely a different athlete. Like this is a guy who's on another level for baseball. He's the biggest star in baseball by far.
A few more minutes with Anthony Kastrovitz, MLB.com, MLB Network. Okay, so let's get nerdy. Let's get nerdy with the numbers, and it's $700 million. But tell us about what's deferred and how it all breaks down for the fans out there.
I mean, this guy's smart. Shohei Ohtani is very smart, and you have to be smart to do what he does, I think. And I think he was dreaming up how he wanted to do his contract for a long time. So it's important to understand that Shohei Ohtani is worth probably $40 million in endorsement deals that he brings in a given year to his team. Probably similar, a probably similar amount of money on an annual basis, as long as he's able to be this freak of nature, incredibly productive player. So it's 10 years, $700 million. And I've seen some people say, well, you can't call it that because so much of it is deferred. It's crazy not deferred. It's $680 million deferred. It is still a $700 million contract. I mean, he will receive $700 million from the Dodgers. It's just that by the time he does, the 10 years after the contract will be that $680 million. It won't be worth $680 million in today's money. MLB has calculated as the total contract is being worth $460 million, which is still a record. Breaks Mike Trout's record. It's just that it's parsed out in an unusual way where he gets $2 million a year for 10 years while also bringing in all that endorsement money I already mentioned. So he's doing just fine. Don't worry about Shohei Ohtani. And then, oh, by the way, after 10 years of receiving $2 million a year, he's got $68 million a year coming for 10 years. And by which point, he can get himself out of California and probably avoid California taxes. And the most important factor in all of this is that, he constructed this in such a way that his team doesn't have the luxury tax hit that it would have otherwise. It's still a big hit. It's still $46 million a year for luxury tax purposes, which is not insignificant, but that's way less than 40, or excuse me, way less than 70. And they're only paying him $2 at a time for the next 10 years. And so it gives them the ability to build around him, which is all he wanted in this whole process, was to be paid properly while also being on a team that has a chance to win a World Series. The Dodgers give him everything he wanted. They're in the location he wanted. They have the player development system he wanted to continue to be great for a long time. They have the track record of being in the postseason every year. And now they have the financial flexibility to have both this incredible, ridiculous, historic trio at the top of their lineup in Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, and Freddie Freeman, and to also have the money they need to go out and get the pitching they need. So it's a really genius contract. And I've seen some people say, well, this isn't fair. In some ways, it's not fair, but it's all within the letter of the CBA that was negotiated between the league and the players. The league had discussed with the players, maybe we should tame down deferments for this very scenario. And the players didn't want to do that, which is understandable because they don't want, players, they don't want anything, tampering with player value. But, you see a situation like this and it's pretty extreme. I don't know that it's much of a precedent because Shohei Ohtani is just so unusual. His value and his willingness to do this is so unusual.
Yeah, I guess that's because I've had a lot of people either on Twitter or just, in general saying, well, oh my gosh, what this opens a door for. Hang on a second. Shohei Ohtani.
And by the way, and I should say, a lot of people say that the Dodgers have cheated. They skirted the system. He offered, in all his discussions
idea
with teams, this was his idea. Yeah. So wherever he signed, it was going to be this. Now, he was probably always going to sign with the Dodgers. They always had the most financial capital and the most just appeal to him as a team, as a perennial winner, in LA. I mean, it was everything lined up perfectly. So, but he would have done this deal with the Blue Jays. He would have done a significantly deferred deal with them as well.
I feel like, too, Castro, and correct me if I'm wrong, Toronto was definitely in it. I don't doubt that. I think it was Toronto and LA. I think ultimately, though, just looking at the two situations and how the teams are built, can't you see him looking at Toronto and going, well, okay, I mean, I'll get this money and whatever, and it will be deferred. But are they really going to be able to build around me like I want them to be able to build around me? Really, the only team that can do that and will do that, obviously, are the Dodgers, right?
Yeah, it's a hard thing in baseball to win consistently. You have to have the budget to do it. Quite frankly, our sport, gets a lot of flack, and deservedly so, for the haves and the have-nots. But you can win on a budget. I mean, teams do it. The Rays do it every year. The Orioles just ran away with the American League East on one of the smallest budgets in baseball. It is hard to do it consistently, though, and especially when you are paying a player of Shohei Ohtani's ilk, and that's why he was willing to defer the deal. But then he also has to look around and see, okay, the Blue Jays. Well, yeah, they've made the playoffs. What is it, 2 of the last 3 seasons, or something like that. But our MLB.com, their MLB Pipeline ranks their farm system 25th out of 30 teams. The Dodgers are just that one team that has everything, where they'd have. It's hard to have the brains and the money and the development and all of that lining up perfectly. And they really do. And I know it hasn't translated to the World Series, and that's the great knock on that organization. But I think that says more about the format and the difficulty of October, it being its own animal, than it does anything about the Dodgers. They're built to win, and they're built to last. And that's a hard thing to do in this game. And if you were to circle any team that checks every box, especially now that they have the DH, that's the thing. 6 years ago, you probably would have gone to the Dodgers. They didn't have the DH then. Now they do. And so it checks every box. The weather, you have some climate control. You have a team that wins every single year, has the farm system to continue to win every single year, has the budget to win every single year. They put themselves in a great spot, and they have Shohei Ohtani to show for it. And
that deferred money is interest free too. Is it? Did I read that right?
It is, yeah.
Wow.
It is. So you think about the money that they can recoup. Again, if he probably is worth $40 million a year for them, from a brand as a vehicle internationally, Japanese advertising in Dodger Stadium, all these things, the growth of the fan base in Japan. He's probably worth $40 million a year right there. And then so you collect that money, and I don't know, you put it in better investments than I've ever come up with, and you probably do pretty well. Or it could just be the next owner's problem. For all we know, the team is sold. I mean, we don't know. We don't know what the future holds. So it's a genius deal. It really is so good for the player and for the team. I know it's not so good for other teams in the NL West and other teams of baseball at large, but it's a brilliant deal for those involved.
Last thing for you, bud. You're also hearing people say that, well, hey, is this gonna open the door for those position players that pitch? And I mean, look, Little League and on up, but they're gonna make a bigger push. I think we need to go back to what you said earlier, that okay, yeah, that's great. If you can do it, then, and you can do both, then maybe you have that chance. But you've got to do them both at an elite level. And that's what people, I think, miss with this. Like, a lot of guys that, if they have to do both, they might be a great hitter that's now an average hitter because they're trying to pitch as well. Whereas Shohei is dominating both. And so that's where it's like, we can talk all day long about, well, what about the next case? I don't know if that next case is coming anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't reset free agency as we know it, because again, Juan Soto's a free agent a year. If he has one of the top 10 ERAs in baseball this year, yeah, he can talk about getting the Shohei Ohtani contract, but he doesn't, And the one thing I will say though, Chico, and this is why I think Shohei Ohtani is a Hall of Famer already, regardless of what happens in this contract, is he's changed the sport in that it's actually on the table now. Like, teams are willing to try it now. That was not the case before he came along. He was a special circumstance where he had already played professionally in Japan, and so shown he could do it at a high level in Japan, where he had the opportunity to do that. He would not have had that opportunity here if he was a homegrown sort of, United States born player, because they get filtered out. They get, okay, at some point you choose a lane pretty much when you start your professional career. But now teams are willing to entertain that concept. There was 8 guys in this last draft taken as two-way players, and I'm not saying all of them or even any of them will make it to the major leagues, but teams are willing to give them a shot now at that, a legit, earnest shot that they didn't have before Shohei Ohtani came along.
Guardians have the number 1 pick.
They do. How about that?
I'm gonna have to get with your buddy Kylie McDaniel, or your colleague would be Jonathan Mayo, and see about that. But yeah, you're right. It's he is just he's one of a kind, and I don't know if we saw this coming or playing out the way it did, but I do think what Bob Nightingale wrote and what others have written, there is some truth to it. At the same time, though, it was, I thought it was pretty warranted, because we don't see anyone like this very often. So really good stuff as usual. By the way, how much of Austin Hedges' $4 million was deferred? Did we get that out yet? I don't know what you guys have been waiting on.
He makes $1 this year, and then the rest is deferred until. I mean, it's crazy. Like, honestly, that contract was as shocking to me as the Shohei Ohtani contract, if not more.
You said that,
knowing that, just knowing that, where they're at financially and all the things they had said to, we can talk about that one at length some other time, Chico.
We had too much here, but Castro, always appreciate your time, buddy. You just continue the great work. Happy holidays to you and the family, and we'll talk soon, pal.
All right. Thanks, Chico.
All right. Thanks, Castro. Anthony Kastrovitz, MLB.com, MLB Network. We are out of here for Tuesday, so lot to think about. A good, bold, bald breakdown from week 15, and talking about the Jacksonville game, then looking ahead to that Chicago Bears game, and of course went around the league with Nick Shook and just talked to Anthony Kastrovitz. So you can catch that on replay throughout the day on iHeartRadio, also wherever you get your podcast, Apple and Spotify. For Michael Bohm producing, I'm Mike Chico Born. We're going to do this all over again tomorrow, beginning at noon, right here on the Big Play Sports Network. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday afternoon, everybody. See you.